without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Darcy McKinnon. Darcy McKinnon is a documentary filmmaker based in New Orleans. Her recent work includes Look at Me, XXX Tentacion, which is directed by Saba Folan, and The Neutral Ground, directed by CJ Hunt. Darcy is currently in production on Naila Jefferson's Commuted, Katie Matthews' Role Play, Jason Fitzroy Jeffers' The First Plantation, amongst what I'm sure is many, many others, because Darcy works very hard. Her prior work, A Fine Girl, Animals, and Live Nude Girls Unite, has screened and been broadcast internationally and has been supported by San Francisco Film, CAM, Chicken and Egg, Firelight Media, ITVS, Black Public Media, Sundance Institute, and the Tribeca Film Institute. Darcy is an alum of the Impact Partners Producing Fellowship, the Sundance Institute Creative Producing Fellowship, and one of Filmmaker Magazine's 2020-25 New Faces in Independent Film. That was tough. And many of us also have the opportunity and the fortune to call Darcy a friend and a mentor. So without further ado, I'd like to pass things along to our keynote speaker, Darcy McKinnon.
Thank you, Zandashay. And in true Southern form, I am absolutely convinced that my internet's going to go out at some point. So please bear with us if we can. I hope everyone's doing well. Hi to all my friends that are on, and hi to all y'all that I don't know yet, but hope to. I'm excited to get started. I almost threw the whole speech away so we could just talk about the Supreme Court decision, but we will, as always, carry on, and I think it's important context for the conversation I want to have today with y'all. On the one hand, it feels super strange to me to keynote anything, but everybody at the New Orleans Film Society knows that running my mouth is both a hobby and a vocation of mine. So I'm sure that's why they invited me, because they knew I could definitely fill an hour. If you don't know me, my name's Darcy, and I am a documentary film producer here in New Orleans. I'm originally from Tampa, Florida, where I was born and raised. Florida, which is the South, and if you don't think Florida is the South, you don't ask me. You can take it up with professional wrestling, Zora Neale Hurston, Big Daddy Don Garlitz, Ray Charles, Gatorland, Leonard Skinner, and sadly today, Ron DeSantis and Anita Bryant. We can just assure you that in all the ways that we understand the South, Florida is distinctly the South, and it's also distinctly itself. Clint, I'm looking at your worried face. Are you losing me? You got me. Okay, great. That's what makes Florida and the South so interesting to me. In my works over the past 2 years are increasingly starting to focus between Louisiana and Florida. Because both of these places for me have no bottom in terms of the depth and breadth of interesting, terrible, wonderful, strange, and lovely stories to tell. So there'll be more work of mine coming up in the upcoming years, and you'll see it both in centered in Louisiana and Florida. As of this year, I've lived longer in Louisiana than I have in Florida. And I think it's time, in light of the theme of Southern legacies, for me to get a few things off my chest. I didn't even visit New Orleans until I was 25 years old. And so my understanding of it as a city was completely formed by what I now understand to be absolutely preposterous narratives. And I think it is, I'd love to see in the chat, those of you who have chosen the South as your home or chosen a new place in the South as your home, what was your understanding of that place before you moved there? And how was it formed by popular culture? Here's my confession. Until I was 25 years old, I loved the 1987 Dennis Quaid and Ellen Barkin vehicle, The Big Easy. It's a crime, romance, thriller set in the New Orleans Police Department. And let's just say it does not hold up over time. I do recommend, it's free on Tubi, that you play a little bit of it just to listen to the accents and the accent work that's done in the film. A more highbrow reference I had was Good Scent from a Strange Mountain, which is a series of short stories about the experience of Vietnamese American immigrants in South Louisiana, mainly women, that was written by a white man from Illinois and won the Pulitzer Prize. The end result of having taken in these references over time and built a story in my head about New Orleans based on these references is that I have spent a long 20 years going through a series of tiny humiliations, being retrained and relearning what it is to be from this specific place. And so for me, learning and unlearning is what we're here to talk about today. When Zandashay asked me to talk about Southern legacies, my first thought was how problematic the word legacy can be. In the South, history and legacies and even truth are contested concepts. They're concepts that are literally being debated on the Louisiana legislature floor this week and the rest of this session. Please check out the Education Committee bills and write your representatives. They are concepts that are being overturned at the federal level today. And history and legacy are concepts that are deeply influenced by the cultural products that surround them. And many of those cultural products over the past centuries have, especially those around the South, have not been made in the South, even when they've been about the South. I'd like to start today with a little clip about this from The Neutral Ground, which is a film that CJ Hunt and I released last year. Len, would you mind queuing up that clip?
They didn't put these symbols up in the nighttime, so they shouldn't come down in the nighttime. They're coming down in the daytime because this is what democracy looks like.
In 1884, this Lee Monument was the largest bronze ever cast in New York. Yes, the first towering monument to the hero of the Confederacy is a transplant from the home of the Yankees.
Well, Northerners are complicit in the lost cause, and this is the thing that never gets said. They publish the books about the lost cause. They make the movies about the lost cause. They basically hold their nose or just turn a blind eye to what's happening in the South around issues of race, for example.
You know, when we talk about reconciliation between the North and the South, what we're really talking about is reconciliation between white people.
As whites-only veterans reunions recast the war as a tragic misunderstanding with fine people on both sides, Northerners got rich making Dixie as romantic and as American as the Wild West.
More people are familiar with popular culture than they are with historical fact. So popular culture has the ability to move sentiment and understanding around history.
This is why reconciliation is possible, because the North buys in.
With the help of the nation's brightest stars, the Lost Cause finally became immortal.
Ready, ho!
Not as a fringe piece of propaganda, but as the story that reunited a nation. A lie born in the South, bronzed in the North.
The piece that I'm taking from that kind of I think about over and over again, especially lately, is the voice of Christy Coleman, who's a historian, who's an amazing human and of herself, who has taken on to be the Black leader and leadership around traditionally white historical spaces, including the American Confederate Museum and Historical Williamsburg. But she says this thing that to me centralizes the importance of our work as Southern storytellers. More people are familiar with popular culture than they are with historical fact. And in the interview, she said that twice or 3 times in a row. And I think it's really key for us to understand the truism about popular culture versus historical fact is what enabled the Lost Cause, for example, to become one of the most successful misinformation campaigns in history, both in the North and the South. And it is what is propelling the rash of misogynist, racist, homophobic, and irrationally cruel policies that are being enacted today at the state and federal levels. But it also crystallizes our mission as Southern filmmakers. When you try and make a list, and I, again, challenge you to do so in your mind or in the chat, of the media that has shaped our own understanding of ourselves as Southerners and our nation's collective understanding of the South, you start to fumble. Think about the stories told by Southerners about the South that truly investigate the ways in which we are Southern and that have been funded and resourced and put up on a national stage. That's when you start to realize how important it is that the work we do and the popular cultural products that we create are truly representative of the diversity of experiences of Southerners. Because the South is diverse and it is rich and it is complex and it is difficult and it is dark and it is hard. And we choose to live here in part because we do not want to live in places where we can pretend that the work of our society is done. There's a generative friction that I find from living in a place where the politics and policies of the state do not align with myself, and that it requires constant conversation and self-reflection and pushback and art. It feels sometimes, days like today, exhausting, a little demoralizing, but it's necessary. And then it's necessary that it's front and center in our work, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. It is unacceptable to me that stories about this place, even when they're difficult, are told solely from practitioners who leave directly after taking those stories and who are not accountable to the communities in which they film. For me personally, the moment I was radicalized around this, the moment this became crystal clear was Hurricane Katrina. I'd only lived in the city a few years. I'd grown up around hurricanes in Florida. But this was, as everybody knows, unlike any other. It was that moment of not being in New Orleans. I was in Austin and then Savannah, temporarily homeless and jobless, and me of tons of privilege, friends and families and my students at the time scattered around the country everywhere. And all we had was a TV screen. We were depending every day on the media coverage of this place, which I knew little enough of, having only lived here a few years at the time, but enough to know that the helicopters and the satellite vans and the white guys with cameras on their shoulders were well-intentioned, but were playing into all the long-held stereotypes of this place as primitive, ignorant, lazy, tragic, lost. And this while people were actively dying, while disaster carpetbaggers were coming to town scrambling for resources, and we were all desperate for a glimpse of home and staring at televisions that were not treating us back with care. The South I know, from Florida's orange groves and sugarcane fields to the red clay in Georgia and Alabama, to the base of Appalachia and the oil-rich marshlands of the Gulf South, has always been a place that's fertile with resources, metaphorical and physical. And as such, it's a site of exploitation and extraction. And that to me is mirrored in the global South extraction, and where we find, I think, connections in places that are not geographically connected to us, but experience the same racialized and economic and geographic extraction practices against their own selves. In order to enable people to go through that easy removal of resources from place, take things away from us and to themselves, mirroring what happened during the era of slavery, mirroring what happened in the era of Reconstruction, and mirroring what happens today, it is required that you have narratives that flatten who we are in order to assuage the guilt around that exploitation. And this practice happens every day, both in negligence and intentionally. And it is what we can do to disrupt it. I have a quick story. I never have a quick story. I have a quick story about that that I learned through filmmaking. Did y'all know that Alabama's state constitution is 12 times longer than the average state constitution? It's 51 times longer than the US Constitution, and it is the longest and most amended constitution still operative anywhere in the world. It was created intentionally that way in 1901 to, and I quote, "within the limits approved by the federal constitution, establish white supremacy in the state." It stands today. That's not the surprising part. The part that I found fascinating, I learned when I was working with Margaret Brown on Descendant in Alabama from a historian. White Alabama legislators at the time had been, since Reconstruction's failure, stealing and cheating to win elections to retain power in Alabama. But that made them sad, y'all. That made them sad because they didn't want to be cheaters and liars. They didn't want to tell their kids that they were liars or they had stolen elections. So what they needed to do so that they didn't have to tell that narrative to themselves, so that they could have a more flattering history of their own selves, was create a constitution that fundamentally made it impossible for the Black vote to have power in Alabama. That way they could hold on to a sense of nobility of action while still retaining power. To preserve that narrative of their own nobility and rooting it completely in a falsehood was the work that still stands today at the legislative level in Alabama. This is, of course, one of a million stories of malfeasance politics in the South. I do believe Florida is currently winning the race on that one. And it can feel overwhelming, especially today. It could be so easy to walk away and imagine ourselves in coastal utopias filled with public transportation access, capital, cultural institutions. And we can admit that, isn't it nice sometimes when you go to San Francisco and everything like just works? It just works. But we love it here, and it's our collective power together, staying here as storytellers, based here, where many of these lies are being formed actively. That's where we can begin to push back. These terrible people, many of them are our people and are our neighbors. Amy Coney Barrett was born in New Orleans. It is our job to get our people in line, and we have to find joy and purpose in being in the South and not complacency. So it's that collective power of storytelling. That's what we need to support. I can tell you, and I know that the folks at the Film Society can tell you, and I need you to know that when I talk to people about living and working and making movies in New Orleans, people know, people at HBO and Hulu and at the Ford Foundation know that we have something special in New Orleans and that it's our community. And they ask about it. They say, what is it like working in a place that has so many great filmmakers in one small place? And frankly, it's really great. It's really, really great. And if you don't have that in your town, you should work to cultivate it, and you can call me and we can talk about it. Because collective storytelling is what we need. We need the combination of voices. So we need Zach Manuel's slow and sweet portraits of masculinity and vulnerability in the urban landscape. We need Zandishay's intergenerational psycho-religious trauma horror work. We need Beau McGuire's radical, imaginative, queer Alabama. We need Keisha Ray Witherspoon's divine futures in Florida. We need Annie Sarjahani's hog hunting with Bubba in Arkansas, and Naveen Shalbal's portrait of Iraqi teenagers in Louisville, and Pavo Hannon's Northern Alabama conspiracy theory thrillers. We need all of these things together, and we all need to be working on these together with each other, because our overlapping independent storytelling existence depends on each other. And I urge you to continue building your team and your network, and not just, yes, at the big film festivals and the big events and the big shows. We all have imagined ourselves there, and we should continue, and we will all be on those stages someday. Do those things, take those opportunities, feel no shame about it. But also see yourself as an essential part of the work in the South and carry that with you when you go, because you can always come back home here. And this, of course, made me think about home, which is a loaded word itself. I've lived in New Orleans for 20 years, but I don't say I'm from here, I know better, but it is my home. And that sense of home, of belonging, and of accountability to place. I frequently get calls or work with filmmakers from out of town, and when they ask for this, you know the feeling, that's like access or shoot or something that feels extractive or careless. At the 15th anniversary of Katrina, I had a major national news outlet call asking if I could just maybe connect them with a family, that had really experienced some real trauma during the storm. And I was like, no, I cannot. But when those things come up, my frequent response is, I have to live here. You leave, and I have to live here, and I have to make stories here with the people who are here. And I think that sense of I have to live here and make movies here gives us a more complex and nuanced lens with which to view the places in which we live and make ourselves at home. We know the subtle heroes, we know the unseen layers, we know who's a hustler and a bullshitter, and whose screen presence may not be as great, but their life presence is, and we need to coax it out of them. And I would say, also, knowing deeply the specificity of the place we call home allows us to find its universalities and its emotional truths and its classical and radical overtones. When I think about Zach's films, I think he has this ability, by knowing this place so well, by being so deeply from here, that his characters that are featured on screen have Shakespearean and Greek heroic qualities that are conferred upon them, that he grants to them with his lens and in collaboration with those people. When we make films about the complex place that we know well, and the places where the people who live here will call us out on our crap, we're forced to see beyond the surface textures and into the emotional realities. I want to play another clip, Lynn. This is from a doc in progress directed by Naila Jefferson called Commuted, that for me illustrates this really well. This is never before seen, so this is a first look. The film's not finished and we've never screened this clip publicly. We've been working on this film for 6 years and we're trying to get it finished for next year's festival circuit. The film focuses on the life of Danielle Metz, who is from uptown New Orleans and who in the late 80s got a triple life plus 20-year sentence as part of a war on drugs prosecution of her husband. I'll leave it at that and then I'll talk a little bit about the clip after you see it.
A number of clemency agencies have worked for the past decade or so to free this woman from penitentiary, spent more than half of her life there. Even our own U.S. Attorney, Oolite, wrote a letter in support, and the president and many other folks have determined that her sentence was part of those federal sentencing guidelines of 20 and 30 years ago that many people deem to be unfair.
They coming home, baby. They coming with that footwork. So watch. They coming through, baby.
Pretty good. Nice seeing you. Okay.
All right.
Nice seeing you.
All right. What's up, girl? What's up, Boosie? What's going on?
Sure be. It's a beautiful day. How you like being out here?
I've been excited today for some reason.
Oh, okay.
You know, I don't get too excited, but I was excited today.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we're glad you're home, folks.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we're glad you're home. Let's have some fun.
Yeah.
I had a love-hate relationship with New Orleans. You know, I liked the city, but then I didn't like it because of what happened to me. You know, I was really mad for a long time. I had to come to terms with what role I played and get me to prison. My son's father, he died when he was 6 months old. He was murdered by the New Orleans police. I was really like devastated. Now I have a baby. I was 18, and it's like, how am I gonna take care of this child? I met my husband through a friend. She called me. She was like, girl, I saw this dude at the second line. It was all there, had on their mink clothes and Rolex watches and alligator shoes. I was like, who was that? She said, girl, they said it was Glenn. He was almost like invisible. You heard about him, but you never got to see him. You could never say, that's him over there. He asked me where I had been all his life. I was so immature then. I was 18 years old. He was 31 years old. I started feeling kind of special, like I was the one that he chose to talk to. He was like, this is how your life gonna be. And I said, what you mean? He said, plentiful, you're not gonna ever want for nothing. That's all I ever wanted, was to be able to take care of my son.
Fun. I chose this section because it's really beautiful to me, of course, and because so many of our friends worked together to make it. That's camera work from Paavo Hannanen, Justin Zweifach, Abe Felix was there that day, Derek Rock did sound. Alex Wiltz is working with us on the edit. But I also chose it because I think there's a courage to the storytelling there that I don't see in the typical footage that most of us who live in New Orleans have seen of second lines. We've seen a million second lines on film, right? It's you know, all over YouTube, and everybody who makes a story about New Orleans pretty much includes a second line in it. What I think Nayla's done so beautifully here, filmmaker who's also from uptown New Orleans, who's grown up here, is to know enough about the pace of life and the culture, and to know so deeply and be so committed deeply to Danielle's story that we are seeing the second line as something that's a place of sadness and anxiety and loss, and Danielle's slight discomfort with being back on the street with people. And I think that is an emotionally honest portrait that is both connected to the reality of place, but doesn't rely on the tropes of that place. It grants us something even bigger than a second line as an emotional moment in the film. I think it's important for us collectively to remember every day that as we go, as the South goes, so goes the nation, good and bad. The culture, politics, and stories of the American South are the baseline of the entire American experience. That grants us a huge responsibility as filmmakers and storytellers, and I hope I do this, a huge responsibility to be honest, to be vulnerable, to be accountable, and to be loud. I hope over the next days of the South Summit, you experience inspiration and support and key strategies to ensure that your storytelling career is abundant and expanding. I hope you meet people that can be part of your collective network. One of the things that I've learned through producing full-time the past few years, which was really, really hard to internalize because we are so acculturated and acclimated to understand that Los Angeles and New York are, the people from there really do know more about this storytelling practice, about this art form, about the business of film than we do. One of the things that I've been trying to reteach myself and internalize is that we are the asset. We are the resource. They don't have our stories and they don't have the talent we have. We contain the value. So I ask you to demand the space and the right to tell your own story. Ask for the rate you deserve and call your friends in New York and LA and find out what the going rate is for positions when you are hired, and then ask for that rate. And if they don't give it to you, it's not because they know that you don't think you're worth it. When you pitch and when you meet with people and when you negotiate and when you write and when you film, try to hold that truth within you, even when it feels like the longest walk. The stories of our South are lesser without us as Southern storytellers, and they are better when we are included in every part of it. We are a fertile, rich, complex, humid, dirty, diverse, loamy range of people and stories of art, and we contain within us the legacies of our South. So thanks.
Thank you, Darcy. I feel like this always happens. There's a really fiery keynote and then I have to say something afterwards. And I'm just feeling really emotional from it. We have about 10 minutes or so for a little bit of a Q&A. I know the chat has been on fire with some really incredible things.
I had to close it so I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's been going. I'd love to get a couple of questions from folks, or even if someone wants to type stack in the comments and maybe jump on mic to ask Darcy a question. We have a little time for that before we go into our first break.
I forgot to shout out in the first clip from the Neutral Ground, obviously directed by C.J. Hunt, shot by Jeremy Bloom and Paavo Hannanen. But what you really saw in that clip was the amazing Jane Geisler's editorial work and Sultana Aisham's score. So shout out.
Yeah, shout out to the incredible crew based here. I want to pull, as we wait for any questions, y'all are going to have to move a little quick with them because we don't have much time, to get into a Q&A, but I just want to share that it seems like what's resonating with a lot of people is this notion that as the South goes, so does the nation, and understanding our value here and the value and the unique specificity of the work that we create as Southerners. That's what the summit is about. And Darcy, I just want to thank you so much for embodying that as a filmmaker, for seeing the South, for seeing Southern filmmakers, and also for nourishing Southern filmmakers. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of us in here can call you a mentor because it's such a sad thing. We should give Darcy a call, which maybe we should give you a little bit of a break, but you've always been so giving, and we can feel how passionate you are about uplifting this community around you. And because of you, so many of the people that you named and so many of the people in this room are in the place that they are in. So
thank you,
I said all that. I meant to say something very brief as we waited for questions, but but I spoke from the heart. I see here in the comments, I applaud the commitment to authenticity. Darcy, what are some of the techniques that you use to maintain your authenticity in the face of notes and responses from Los Angeles and New York execs and financiers? I've always struggled with that as a writer from North Carolina and Mobile. It's a great question. This is from Cricket Rumley.
Hi, Cricket. Thank you for that question. So I used to run an organization called Novak, also give Nola Day, give Novak. And I think one of the things that happened out of that, Clint and Kyoko and Zanshay and Chloe Walters Wallace and I got, because of our organizational affiliations, got to spend a lot of time running our mouth publicly about the South. And that has been able to set me up, I think, a little bit more than I would have before as a bit of an authority or have credibility around that issue. I have leaned into the language of accountability and authenticity in creation that has been part of the kind of the documentary ecosystem lately. I think one of the challenges is really about compensation and equitable pay. And it is not easy all the time. But I think I'm not above a kind of like a grandma finger wag around equity to folks who definitely don't want to be called out at this point in history. And so that's been some of that work. I think I also try to make sure that my directors feel super supported in their own authenticity. And that enables me, it's always easier to advocate on behalf of someone else, I think. So if I'm working on projects where the director is the right person to tell that story, there's a bit of an immutable force that I can advocate for and when we make those decisions that are about access, compensation, resources, and creative notes. But it's constant. It's a thing that has to be done.
Great question. Thank you for asking that. And a couple of you have also asked if you'll be able to find the keynote later on. Answer to that is yes. We'll be recording all of our sessions and we put them into a playlist so you can go back and listen to this and cry or get really fired up or whatever your response to it is or was.
I can also add, I would say, Zanshay, that I rely on the work of other filmmakers. So when I'm talking about the work that I'm representing, I'm also talking about Time and Garrett Bradley's success with Time. I'm also talking about Socks on Fire. I'm also talking about the work of Southern filmmakers who have seen success. And so I just say that to say that I am always trying to build up my friendships and my network of Southern filmmakers, because they are also what gives me credibility when I'm asking for the creative and economic resources to do what we need to do.
Yeah, thank you. And you do a great job of it. Spirit moved, yes. Spirit moved through you, Darcy. That's what we're saying in the chat.
Okay.
Well, with that said, I want to go ahead and prep us for our first break of the day. We're going to have about a 15 or 10 or so minute break before we jump into, oh, I'm sorry, one more question before I move on. From Stephen, could you distinguish between the South as a region and the South as a collection of cultures and the South as a mindset? So there's different types of Souths that we want to explore.
I mean, you just did, didn't you? I think it's all those things. You know, I come from Florida, and I come from Tampa, which is like not Miami and also not Tallahassee, right? And it's this place that both where like everybody is a Gutierrez or a Hernandez, and yet everybody also has a Southern accent, and it kind of embodies those multiplicities of cultures. My father's family's from the Caribbean, which I think of as the South as well. And I've done some work with Elaine McMillan Sheldon, who is really kind of the filmmaker of Appalachia, if you will. And we talk a lot about how Appalachia and Louisiana are so distinct and yet so tied together in terms of history. I think that Adele, my father's family's from Grand Cayman and the Bay Islands. I think when I think about it, I think about united themes, united histories, and united goals and interests, right? When I'm thinking about the global South, I'm thinking about extractive industries and the impacts and the way that racism and oppressive politics are put in place to justify extractive policies, and places that might have connected stories to that. But I also feel strongly that it's like not my job to tell North Carolina's story, and it's not my job to tell Kentucky's story, even North Louisiana or Texas's story, right? What I know is like the I-10 and 75, and then I'm learning more about my own history in the Caribbean. So those are the places that I'm interested in and starting to look at.
Great question. Thank you. So we are gearing up to go. Okay, well, one more question. I feel like y'all wait. You like that I kind of do this thing, but this is really the last one. So why producing? Why that path for you? This is coming from Dawn Logston.
Dawn, I like working collaboratively. And I think I've never been fully convinced in most cases that I have a singular vision. I have a multiplicity of vision. I kind of backwards into running Novak, and then got a kind of, you know, bootleg MBA, I think, running an organization. So I'm no longer afraid of numbers. And I love, as you can tell, running my mouth, and which means I am not uncomfortable pitching. I love to talk about great ideas and think and strategize about how those great ideas can be made real in this very incredibly expensive art form that we choose to practice. So I think part of it is that I feel comfortable in those things that I make a lot of creatives uncomfortable, and I like the partnerships that come out of it.
Perfect. Thank you all for your questions. Okay, with that said, we're going to go ahead into our first break in a second, and then after that, we are moving into a panel with a couple of different writers who have written around our subject of Southern legacy. These are really personal, moving essays that I'm really excited for you all to get a glimpse into. And we'll also have a feature from presenting artist Jose Torres Tama, who will be preceding that panel. And then later in the day, we'll be in conversation with artists Zach Manuel and Nick Briere-Z. So there's plenty to look forward to. We'll be back and moving around 12:15. And with that said, thank you so much, Darcy, for an incredible keynote and words that are going to stick with us for a very long time. And thank you, everybody, for coming to this opening ceremony for South Summit. We'll see you in just a bit.
Thanks so much. Thanks to all my friends and new friends. Bye.